I've always been a practical man. I don't have much time for superstitions or old wives' tales, and I've never believed in curses. But lately, things around the farm have been so bad it's made me wonder. The past year has been pretty brutal. Crops are failing, and vandals have been sneaking onto the property at night. I'm struggling to keep the farm afloat. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle. With Halloween just around the corner, things are getting worse. Groups of local kids have been daring each other to sneak onto my land, screaming and trampling the fields. I've chased them off a few times, but they always come back at night. The day before Halloween came, and I needed to visit the local general store to pick up some supplies. Mr. Simmons, the store's owner, noticed the tired look on my face and warmly engaged me in conversation. "You look like you've seen better days, John," he said, leaning over the counter with a knowing look in his eyes. I let out a heavy sigh. My heart felt like a stone in my chest. "It's these kids, Mr. Simmons. They're all over my fields, trampling the crops, stealing the Halloween pumpkins. I've tried so much to keep them away, but they just keep coming back. I'm at my wit's end." Mr. Simmons nodded slowly, as if he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. "What you need is a scarecrow. But not just any scarecrow. The Old Harper Scarecrow. It's got a way of keeping folks off your land. If you believe the stories, that is." I eyed him skeptically. "The Harper Scarecrow? I've never heard of it." Mr. Simmons' eyes darkened, almost seeming to change from blue to black. He glanced around the store, as if making sure no one else was listening. I wondered if he was slightly crazy. "It's an old legend around these parts, from way before your time, said to ward off anything that comes near. It's been passed down through my family for generations, scared the life out of folks who dared cross it. People say it's cursed, but maybe that's just talk." I was at my wit's end, willing to try anything at this point. "What's the catch?" I asked. "No catch. I've got it out back. It's been in storage for years. You can take it, free of charge, on one condition." "What's that?" "Once you put it up, you don't take it down. And whatever you do, don't look it in the eyes," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I shrugged my nagging sense of unease off. "Sure, I'll give it a try. Can't hurt, right?" That night, I dragged the rough, misshapen form across my decimated pumpkin field and placed it right in the middle, against a wooden post. It was a ghastly thing, with a ragged shirt and trousers that flapped wildly in the wind. And its face was the worst part. It had deep, hollow eyes that seemed to watch me, no matter which direction I stood. The unease persisted, but I shook it off. It was just an old scarecrow after all. I secured it to the post and headed back inside, trying to ignore the damp chill that descended over me. My little daughter Sarah came out to see what I was up to. "Come on, back inside," I said, a bit too sharply. I didn't want her anywhere near that creepy thing. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Strange noises drifted in from outside. Rustlings in the corn, footsteps crunching through dry leaves, and what sounded like faint whisperings. I wondered how stupid I must have been to listen to that crazy old man's nonsense. It's obvious the vandals must be back. But my unease continued, and an unnatural coldness crept through me, settling deep in my bones. I got up, peered through the window, and there was the scarecrow, standing in the same spot, watching with its eyeless gaze. The next morning, I went out to check on the pumpkins, and to my surprise, the scarecrow had moved. It was no longer facing the road, but had turned slightly, its head tilted, its hollow eyes now fixed on my house. Another creeping coldness came over me, but I pushed the unease aside once more. Maybe the wind had blown it around a bit. Over the next few days, the strange occurrences continued. Every morning, I'd find the scarecrow in a different position. Its head would be tilted further, its arms stretched out wider, its posture becoming more human. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, and I moved around the farm doing my usual jobs. but it was getting harder to brush off. The old man's warning echoed in my mind, "Don't look it in the eyes." But some strange compulsion was urging me to do so, to confront this superstitious nonsense once and for all. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I kept watch from my bedroom window, my eyes fixed on the field. Just after midnight, I saw it happen. The scarecrow stepped down from its post, moving slowly but deliberately straight towards my house. My heart racing, I grabbed my shotgun, running outside with a mix of fear and fury. "All right, that's enough," I shouted, pointing the gun at the spiky figure. But just as I was about to pull the trigger, the scarecrow vanished. 1 second there, the next, gone. I spun around, frantically looking, and that's when I saw it, standing right behind me. Before I could react, I felt a powerful force sucking me backwards, dragging me towards the scarecrow's post. I tried to scream, but my breath was knocked out of me when I slammed into the wood. My body went stiff, my skin hardened, becoming rough like burlap. I felt my lips clamp shut, sealed with invisible thread, my arms and legs locked in place. I was trapped, unable to move, unable to speak. And then I watched as the scarecrow, no, the thing wearing my face, turned and walked back towards my house. It moved just like me, even wearing my clothes, its steps confident, like it had done this 1,000 times before. I tried to cry out, to warn my family, but I no longer had a tongue or air in my lungs. I was a prisoner in another body, forced to watch, powerless, helpless. Days blurred into weeks, then into months. I could only stare as the imposter lived my life, my family none the wiser. I could feel my mind starting to slip, even the numb despair becoming a hazy memory. Halloween night came again. I could hear Sarah and her brother laughing, see the decorations on the porch, the lights flickering in the evening dark. My wife and the kids were playing hide and seek outside, running around the yard. I watched them move closer to the field, closer to where I was. I tried again to scream, to move, to do anything, but I was frozen in place, my mouth brittle, dry, and sewn shut. Sarah, my beautiful, precious daughter, came running towards me, my dry, lifeless body the perfect hiding spot. She tripped and fell near the post, her small hands grabbing the rough wood as she tried to steady herself. She stood up, dusting herself off, and turned back to the house, but something held her back. She turned, looked at me, or at least in my direction. Her eyes were wide and her smile faded into a look of confusion, and then fear. She took a hesitant step back, sensing something was wrong. The imposter called out to her from the porch, its voice calm and warm. "Come on back now, Sarah. Time to head inside." Sarah hesitated, then began to walk obediently back towards the house, glancing over her shoulder at me one last time. I wanted to believe that she knew, that somehow she could see the truth. But she kept walking, and my hope crumbled into despair. As dawn broke and the first light of morning began to spill over the fields, I saw it. There, just a few yards away from me, was another post, smaller, newer. I strained to make it out through the growing light. The sun's rays lengthened, and now I could just make out the shape of a tiny figure perched high on the post, a new scarecrow. As the sun fully rose, I saw her face, the same small dress, the burlap pulled tight across her features, her eyes wide and staring, filled with the same terror I felt. I wanted to scream, to bellow, to thrash, to do anything, but I was locked in place, motionless. I could only stare at my daughter, now trapped like me, forever cursed to be another silent guardian in this God-forsaken field. And then, as the sun lit her face, I saw her eyes flicker with understanding. She knew what had happened. As night fell, I heard familiar footsteps approaching. The imposter stopped before us, reaching out to gently stroke my daughter's burlap cheek with my own calloused hand. In that moment, I realized our nightmare had only just begun. Thanks for watching the first videos from Tales from the Shadows. We hope you enjoyed it, so please like, subscribe and press the notification bell to keep up to date with all the new stories we'll be producing. So thanks again.